So, I don't like math. And Jonah Vasquez is a mathematician. So I don't like Jonah Vasquez. That's a bit unfair, I suppose, but much like math itself, Jonah's lore confuses me. It feels like various misdirections and shifts in attention that raise more questions than answers. I mean, on the one hand, that makes sense. This lore is pretty good. The lore could be good if you look at it from that perspective. Like a real horror thriller story, it's hard to get a sense of what events will lead to what and certain clues mean. But then on the other hand, thriller stories like this only work well when the author carefully leaves breadcrumbs of the clues for the audience to begin piecing together, or, crafts a story in a manner that really gets you invested and you get to kind of figure out what's going on as you go. Here, they have to wait till the very last portion of the lore to give any answers, and again, that feels like a math equation. Let's just get into it. Jonah's story starts simple enough. Born to an impoverished family, he always had a gift for numbers and math. He studied great mathematicians and thinkers of the ancient day and took several advanced classes, and one day he was sent a strange series of numbers to solve. The numbers were 8, 25, 19, 44, 1, negative 20.37, negative 69.85, 13, 2, 26, 11, 1. Now, Jonah was able to figure out one portion of the numbers easily enough. Negative 20.37 and negative 69.85 were map coordinates to a place in Chile, but the rest made no sense to him. So he decided to leave the numbers alone and focus on his career. He was hired by the CIA as a codebreaker, but on his first day of the job, he saw those same numbers written in the handbook. Now, this was feeling a bit weird to him, but Jonah had work to do, so he couldn't focus on that mystery right now. Now, I want to pause here and point out, this is good. So far, this is good. You've got this series of numbers. They keep appearing in Jonah's life. Maybe they're important, and I think it'd be interesting if we follow Jonah on his course to try to figure out these numbers, but that's not what we do. What we see instead is that Jonah went on to eventually work on a code-breaking job in Quintana. However, the codes for the rebels that he had been deciphering turned out to be a decoy, and the rebels launched bombs on the civilian population. Horrified and guilt-stricken, Jonah used his skills to strike back. Without authorization, he hacked into the rebel computer mainframe and began moving money from their accounts to the families of the victims of their bombing raid. Pause. If he had the ability to hack their computers, maybe instead he could have leaked their locations and plans. I don't know. I'm not CIA. Who knows? Guess you got to be a math guy. Anyway, the rebels caught on to him, attacked his apartment, and nearly killed him. The CIA chastised him for going off the reservation the way he did and tried to put him back on another assignment. A very secret, odd assignment. Several signal stations had been noted throughout Europe, and he was tasked with deciphering their signals. Oddly enough, many were horror stories, podcasts, and stories being told like those around a campfire. But within the stories were codes. Secret messages or ideas. Messages about death and rebirth, sacrifices and hunts. All kinds of creepy stuff. But suddenly Jonah heard a code among these stories that startled him. The very numbers that kept appearing throughout his life. 8, 25, 19, 44, 1, negative 20.37, negative 69.85, 13, 2, 26, 11, 1. Enough was enough. He had to know the meaning. He bought a plane ticket to Chile to check out the coordinates. It was an abandoned graveyard in the deserts of Chile. Crows cawed at him as he examined the area, and as he did, he began to have an epiphany, a sudden realization. He had to think about things from beyond his own vantage point. He began to look into ancient civilizations and calendars, comparing their dates with the Gregorian calendar, and what he discovered shocked him. The first series of numbers was his birthday, and the other was today's date. The code was a prophecy. He would be here, at this spot, today. But why? What for? And it was in that instant the entity claimed him. Okay. This had the makings of a great thriller, but the ending was awful. In fact, I told my brother about this, and he gave me a great example. There's this great backpacking story. And the idea, if you're on a backpacking trip with a bunch of kids, and you need them to stop complaining, you tell them this story and it'll shut them up for the entire trip. What you do is you basically tell the story of this father and his son. And every time the son does something good in his life, the father says, "Son, I'm so proud of you. I'm going to buy you whatever you want." And the son says, "I want 1,000 pink and yellow ping pong balls." And throughout the story, you keep telling different events in the son's life again and again and again and again. And every time the son does something good and the father says, I want to buy you something, the son says, I want 1,000 pink and yellow ping pong balls. Then at the very end of the story, after you've done this for maybe an hour or two or however long the trip is, the son was in a car accident, he's about to die, and the father's crying and says, son, please, is there anything I can get you? And the son says, I want 1,000 pink and yellow ping pong balls. And the father says, son, I'll get them, but I gotta know, what do you want them for? It's all you've ever asked for. What do you want? And then the son dies. That's the end of the story. Now, if you're thinking, what a letdown, I wanted to know the big secret. That's kind of the way this story felt to me. That's kind of the way this felt to me. And I'll tell you why. The revelation that the code was actually his birthday, these coordinates, and this day is a neat twist. That's a neat kind of twist, but there are questions. Question number one, who gave it to him? Was it the entity? Why did the entity pick him out this early? I thought the entity picked out people based on their emotions and their life story and all that kind of stuff. But according to this, he got this code as early as his childhood. So did the entity know that his life was going to turn out like this? That's not very well explained. Number two, what did the whole story behind the rebels in Quintana have to do with anything? What did that felt like a total red herring, like a shift away from everything. It didn't have anything to do with the code. It didn't have anything to do with him looking up what the code meant. It didn't have anything to do with him trying to understand the code. I thought this was going to be him trying to figure out what this was all about. It's kind of like his story just took a sudden left turn, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, there was a code, wasn't there? And then come back to it. What was the point of that? Third, how did he know to look to ancient civilization calendars? What made him think that? Like, why didn't he think about that before? Is he familiar with ancient civilization calendars? Is he familiar with the ancient Babylonians and Persians and all that? Is that something that he just researches on the regular? Number four, what does that have to do with the artist? I mean, obviously he went to Chile because this was the location where the artist died. Pretty obvious. What does that have to do with the artist? The artist didn't have to do with ancient Gregorian or Babylonian or Palestinian calendars. That feels like it's more in the realm of the plague than it is in the artist. See, that's the thing. If they dropped more hints, like if they established that Jonah Vasquez, his brother, was really good with calendars and dates, or if one of his friends in the CIA was kind of fascinated with ancient civilization, then maybe we could have started tying all this together. But I feel like what they did was they wanted to tell one story, forgot, oh yeah, we're supposed to tie him into this, aren't we? Quickly throw something together. And that's why I think that this was kind of weak. This was a very weak story. It's not bad. It has the makings of something decent for like a good thriller kind of character story, but for what it is, it's not that great. I'm going to be honest, it really didn't impress me. But that's not what y'all care about. Y'all don't really care about the lore. Y'all care about the perks. So let's talk about the perks. Jonah carries Boon, Exponential, Corrective Action, and Overcomer. Now, Boon Exponential, this is one of the strongest boons in the game, but it is incredibly situational and must be used wisely. Like all boon totems, you activate this perk by finding a hex or dull totem in the trial and blessing it. Once blessed, this totem acts as a boon for everything within a 24-meter radius. If a survivor is downed within this totem's radius, their recovery from the dying state is increased by 100%, and they gain the ability to fully recover out of the dying state. Yeah. Now, many of you probably see the major problem with this ability right out the gate. Most killers just pick up survivors after downing them right away, meaning you won't have time to make use of this perk. This perk is only really effective in slugging plays. I'd say it's useless, but I'll never forget a match long ago against a bully squad where they set up this totem and then would deliberately let me down them in a key location where it would be impossible for me to reach a hook in time from where they were. But if I left them alone, they could just recover on their own. It was a nightmare. So if you're one of those skilled players, well, there you go. Enjoy this perk. For me, I never really got much use out of it. Now, Corrective Action, I actually do like this perk when I'm running with a new player like my friend Daniel. I use this perk a lot when I was playing with him. It's a great help to those working on skill checks. This perk starts with 3 tokens at the beginning of the trial. For each great skill check, this perk will gain another token for a maximum of 5. Now, if a survivor cooperating with you fails a skill check, this perk will spend 1 token to correct the failed skill check and treat it as a good skill check instead. So it's definitely a little bit of a saving grace for your fellow survivors if they're struggling. So I do like that. And then overcome. This perk doesn't make a great deal of sense for Jonah, it's given his story, but it is a decent one to get away from the killer. When you are hit by a killer attack, you gain 1 hit speed boost that lets you get a head start to escape the killer. And if you're injured by any means, this perk increases the duration of that speed boost for an extra 2 seconds. This perk causes you to enter the exhausted status effect, and this lasts for 40 seconds. So it's basically a way to kind of help you get further away from the killer after being hit. Yeah, that's about it. So my final thoughts on Jonah? Underwhelming, really. I mean, I'm not going to say he's bad. I've definitely seen far worse than Jonah. But I'm not really a fan of it either. It's not something that really jumps out at me. His lore is kind of lackluster, kind of mediocre, if I'm being honest. It has potential, but it's not going all out the way it really needs to. It really needed to dive more into the mystery and thriller aspect of that code and make it really make Jonah just absolutely obsessed with it. Maybe it's something that he's always working on in his spare time. Maybe you could have made it that's why he missed the correct code in the Quintana incident. He was so obsessed with figuring out this code that was sent to him that he overlooked something with the Quintana incident, and you could make that tie into it. I don't know. There are things you could have done with it. And as for his perks, one of them I want to say is weak, but I've seen it used very effectively, so I won't say it. The other 2 are pretty good. They're okay. They're fine. I think that they're acceptable. I think that there are better perks out there to play. I very rarely see anyone running any of these other perks. I'll be honest. The only one I see anyone running from his repertoire is Boone Exponential. But that's just me. Anyway, guys, we are finally done with this chapter of Dead by Daylight. Next time, we are moving on to a totally different chapter. Now, if I remember correctly, I've already done the next killer, which I believe is the Onryo. I've already done that killer, so I think the next one is the Dredge, which is a character everyone's been waiting on me to get to. So I'm very, very excited to get to this next killer. But that's for next time in the fog. See you next time, guys. Take care.